Get ready. 68 books, 7 rounds, 4 brackets, 1 champion, and 1 out-of-shape referee. It's Book March Madness. Submit your own titles, vote for your favorites, watch the fierce competition, and predict your champion to enter to win a prize. Who will be left standing when the final buzzer sounds? Only you can decide. Let's do this!
Hello everyone and welcome back to Book March Madness. It is time to reveal the results of the first round competition. I just got done watching the Baylor, North Carolina game, basketball game, and that game was all over the place. And it's kind of fitting because this first round of voting was all over the place. I did not anticipate the first round being this controversial, and I don't necessarily mean controversial as in people were talking and sharing opinions with me, but controversial as in the voting was everywhere. In a 36-hour period, you guys certainly ran rings around where I was expecting all the voting to happen, and we had 5 overtimes in between different pairs of books. Also had not anticipated needing an overtime so soon, but we did for 5 separate pairings. But thankfully, all of them are now out of overtime. There is a clear winner for each pairing, and it is time to talk about the results of the first round of voting. I want to talk a little bit about how I will go through each of the brackets, because I like to highlight the 3 kinds of results that I kind of structure these videos after. So the first is the comfortable wins. So the higher ranked champions of literature that comfortably won over the lower ranked rookie release of that genre. So that's one that we'll do those first. And then we'll do something called close calls, in which by a very narrow margin, so 5 or less votes, if the champion higher ranked title won over the rookie release title, if it was very close. And we have a lot of those in this particular round. So those are the close calls when the champion just barely edged out over the rookie release that it's going up against. And then the last category is the upsets, which, you know, we're all here for. It's the theme of March Madness, right? You want to know which underdogs are going to go farther in the competition. So it was very interesting to watch, slightly chaotic to watch, and there's some really interesting matchups that are coming in the second round. But for now, let's talk about the winners of the first round. So we're going to start with the fiction bracket. Let's talk about the comfortable wins first, shall we? We had a few of them, 3 of them. I'm reading my computer screen over here that has all the results. So we had 3 comfortable wins between 3 champions of the genre. So the first is Anne of Green Gables by a massive margin. Anne of Green Gables won over Cloud Cuckoo Land, so Cloud Cuckoo Land is unfortunately now out of the competition. So that was the first comfortable win of the fiction bracket. The second is actually between the next lowest pairing, between The Lord of the Flies and Dial A for Aunties, again by a pretty massive margin. Lord of the Flies won over Dial A for Aunties, which is now out of the competition. And the third and final comfortable win for the fiction bracket is between A Christmas Carol and American Dirt, again, by a decent amount of votes. The Christmas Carol became the leader. It wasn't that way for a while. Fans of The Christmas Carol kind of showed up later in the voting period, but it did get enough to qualify it for a comfortable win, so American Dirt is no longer in the competition. We did have one close call in the fiction bracket, and it was the one that I was most interested to watch, if you'll remember from the Selection Sunday video, and that was between The Count of Monte Cristo and Anxious People by Friedrich Bachmann. The Bachmann title, there were a lot of heated people who didn't like that the Bachmann title in last year's competition didn't get farther than it did, and unfortunately, it seems to be kind of the trend, because by 1 vote, The Count of Monte Cristo did win over Anxious People. That was a close one. Anxious People was ahead for so long, and then slowly towards the end of the day, The Count of Monte Cristo's fans showed up, and by 1 vote, it is now continuing on the competition, and Anxious People will not. So the remaining matchups in this particular bracket are all the upsets. So let's start from our bottom and work our way to the top. So On the bottom, we have One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest up against the highest rated rookie release, which was the Midnight Library, and by a decent margin. The Midnight Library did win over One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Moving up, we have Infinite Jest versus Sally Rooney's Beautiful World, Where Are You? And again, a lot of people showed up for the Sally Rooney title, which is what I was kind of expecting, and it did win by quite a hefty margin over Infinite Jest, so Infinite Jest is now out of the competition. Moving up again, a smaller margin, but still a win for the lower ranked book. That was Such a Fun Age by Kylie Reed versus Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck. And Such a Fun Age by 5 votes did upset the Grapes of Wrath. So the Grapes of Wrath is now out of the competition. And then perhaps what is probably one of the most contested books of last year's competition, Where the Crawdads Sing, by a massive margin. Completely decimated the Judy Blume title. I did not expect that to be as blatantly obvious on the wildcard choice as it was. I kind of expected the Judy Blume title to do better than it did. But unfortunately, I don't know what Delia Owens is doing to her fan base, but whoever they are dedicated and showed up for this book. And unfortunately, the Judy Blume title will no longer be in the competition. And that is the first #1 champion book to go down in the first round competition. I'm very nervous for the other 3 #1 champion picks. Overall, I like what I'm seeing in this particular bracket, because while this technically isn't a rookie release, the Where the Crawdads Sing, it is still on the sort of underdog side, and so we have kind of a 50-50 split of champion and rookie. So I like that there's an equal balance. That's good. Moving on to the historical fiction, we had 2 comfortable wins in the historical fiction bracket, and both of them fairly high up in ranking for the champion literature, which was great. So let's start with the first one. The first comfortable win is between Memoirs of a Geisha and the Jane Austen Society. Again, by quite a few votes, Memoirs of a Geisha did take it over the Jane Austen Society, so the Jane Austen Society will no longer be in the competition. And we do have a #1 ranked champion title that is victorious and will remain in the competition, because The Kite Runner, again, by a pretty wide margin, was voted for more than the Book of Lost Names by Kristen Harmel, which did beat out the Poisonwood Bible in the first 4 competition, but unfortunately failed at the first hurdle of the first round, so it will no longer be in the competition. This was the bracket in which there was a long-standing overtime. I had not anticipated there to be this much opinion about the historical fiction bracket, but this was the bracket where a lot of people kind of butted heads on where they were voting. We had 2 separate overtimes for 2 different brackets, and it was kind of hit or miss whether it was actually going to be decided one way or another by the time the overtime ran out, but it did. And so I want to talk about the close calls, because there are several of them, 2 of them to be exact, in this particular bracket, and again, very high up in the champion literature, because people really showed up for some of the new releases in this genre. So let's start again from the lowest and we'll work our way to the top. So the first close call was between The God of Small Things and The Rose Code. 1 vote separated The God of Small Things and The Rose Code, and the last vote that came in very close to the end of overtime pushed it in favor of The God of Small Things. So unfortunately, the Kate Quinn title, which I know a lot of people really enjoyed, is no longer in the competition. One of the first overtimes we actually had was between The Things Fall Apart and The Book of Longings, and that one was a pretty clear decision, and then some more votes came in and it became very close to being overtime once again. But by a few votes, Things Fall Apart did win over The Book of Longings, but it was very close. So The Book of Longings is no longer in the competition. Now, if we're looking here, we notice that the top 4 ranked champion books in this particular bracket are safe. 2 were comfortable wins, 2 were close calls, and now something really odd is going to happen, and I'm really excited about this because I don't quite know how this happened, but it did happen. Oh my goodness. Okay. So, we're going to talk about the upsets, and we'll work our way from the bottom and, of course, go to the top. So, between the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society and Malibu Rising, Malibu Rising Taylor Jenkins Reid fans were all over it and made sure that it was the book that came out victorious. So unfortunately, the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society is no longer in the competition. And despite my infatuation with her, poor Margaret Atwood unfortunately got decimated by the Vanishing Half. People showed up for the Vanishing Half. So many people voted for the Vanishing Half. It was insane. And it was victorious, so unfortunately Alias Grace is no longer in the competition. And again, like I said, Kristen Hanna is kind of the current queen of the historical fiction genre, and it was just proven, because again, so many people showed up and voted for Kristen Hanna that unfortunately Toni Morrison really didn't stand a chance. So once again, a much-loved champion work of literature has fallen to a rookie release. Can you sense a theme with this bracket? Because guess what? The Joy Luck Club also succumbed to the very popular release of The Lost Apothecary, which did emerge victorious after this first round. So the Joy Luck Club is no longer in the competition. We have a 50-50 split. Look at that. Top 4 champion works of literature and top 4 rookie releases. So this is going to be sort of the bracket to watch, I think. Encore bracket, which is again authors with a single novel going up against debut novels. We had no comfortable wins in this bracket, which surprised me a lot. We had 3 close calls, however. So again, we're going to work our way from the bottom and go to the top. The first close call was between The Picture of Dorian Gray and She Who Became the Sun by 3 votes. The Picture of Dorian Gray did win over She Who Became the Sun. Moving way up, The Bell Jar, by how many votes was it? 2 votes. Did win over the Tracy Lang We Are the Brennans, which is now out of the competition as well. And unfortunately, despite the amount of people who voted for it in the first 4 competition, Poisoned did lose to Black Beauty by 1 vote, I think. Yeah, 1 vote. That was a weird one to watch. I definitely thought that Black Beauty would have more of a lead than it did, but it didn't. By 1 vote, Black Beauty won over Poisoned, which unfortunately, even though it was victorious during the first 4 round, is no longer in the competition. And the rest in this bracket, I'm looking at my screen and it's just so hard to believe, but the rest of this bracket is all upsets. All of the rookie releases overcame the champion literature, which was very surprising to me. So the top couple in here, that part didn't surprise me, because I kind of thought that they would do well in terms of like the highest ranked rookie releases. So The Spanish Love Deception did win by quite a comfortable margin over Heartburn by Nora Ephron. And the one that I expected to win, because it's so popular right now, is The Firekeeper's Daughter, and it did win over The Bone People by Carrie Holm. In the Gilded Ones and Dr. Zhivago, I kind of figured that Dr. Zhivago would probably be one of the least read out of this particular bracket, and you guys proved me right. Or at least those of you who voted and didn't like it. So The Gilded Ones was victorious over Dr. Zhivago. And a decision that surprised me in how you voted, we had an overtime between Wuthering Heights and The Paper Palace. And I think it's only by 3 votes did The Paper Palace in overtime win over Wuthering Heights, which was so surprising to me. But unfortunately, another classic, the female empowerment classics, are no longer in the competition. And the final one, again, another title I was a little skeptical about how many people had actually read it, but I was curious to see whether it was good enough to withstand being in this competition. Unfortunately, it did fail at the hurdle, and Honey Girl, by quite a comfortable margin, did win over A Confederacy of Dunces. This is such an odd bracket. We have the top 3 of the rookie releases and only the top 2 of the champions, and so it's very clear that in this particular round, the rookie releases have the edge on the competition. I moved this just a little bit, so hopefully you can see it better. But let's talk about our final bracket, which was the Book Was Better bracket. We had 1 comfortable win in this particular bracket, and that was between The Wizard of Oz and Chaos Walking. The Wizard of Oz had a huge amount of votes, and it's one of the most voted for titles in this whole competition, which I mean, it's an amazing book and it's an amazing movie. So much lore and other writings have come out of the Wizard of Oz story, so it's not surprising to me. But unfortunately, the Patrick Ness title and that Tom Holland movie is no longer in the competition. For the Book Was Better bracket, we also had 3 close calls. Again, we'll start from the bottom and work our way to the top. In what I think to be one of the most surprising decisions that came out of this first round was between The Life of Pi and Emma. If you don't know, Pride and Prejudice won last year's competition. It pretty much crushed everything that it went up against, and so I was kind of expecting a Jane Austen title to do the same. But I'm not kidding when I say that 2 votes separated Emma from The Life of Pi, and The Life of Pi won, which was just so surprising to me because it's a Jane Austen title. You know, I'm kind of anticipating it doing better than it did, and it didn't. And the people who really liked The Life of Pi showed up and voted. Let's move up a rung, because this was the other surprising one. I, again, had kept my eye on Dune throughout putting this competition together because of how popular the movie was, and by 2 votes, again, it lost to the girl in with the dragon tattoo, which I did not think would happen. I expected it to be close, but I didn't think it would lose, and it did. So the Frank Herbert title Dune, one of the more recent movie adaptations on this bracket, is no longer in the competition. And the last close call is a little higher up the bracket, but it is between The Silence of the Lambs and Those Who Wish Me Dead. Again, by only a margin of 3 votes did The Silence of the Lambs win over the Michael I don't know how to pronounce his last name, Those Who Wish Me Dead. Now to talk about the upsets. Can you guess? The remaining 3. So the Netflix Jenny Han light romance fans really showed up for Always and Forever. This did have an overtime, and Always and Forever did pull ahead of the Silver Linings Playbook. So the 3rd installment of the To All the Boys I Loved Before trilogy will be moving on in the competition. Moving up a rung, again, another matchup that I didn't see going this way. Unfortunately, though he is excellent at what he does, James Bond is not the best at Book March Madness, so he is out of the competition in favor of The Call of the Wild by Jack London. And finally, we have another number 1 ranked champion title that is out of the competition in the first round, and The Maze Runner by 1 vote won over Schindler's List, and which is so surprising because Schindler's List is such an iconic movie, and yet people really like that YA dystopian fantasy fiction enough to bump off one of the biggest movies ever made. Here we have it. Those are all the results of the first round of voting. This one, I think probably the fiction bracket was the one that I was least surprised by, but everything else was a little mind-boggling, to be honest. I'm going to quick rearrange my board, and then we'll talk about the pair-ups for the second round of voting. Also, I just realized that I forgot to do the last matchup in the Book Was Better bracket between Fight Club and The Invisible Man, and again, it was an upset, so by a few votes, The Invisible Man did win over Fight Club, and another much-loved movie is no longer in the competition. Okay, the board is rearranged. Oh, I spoke too soon. Hang on. So these are all of the pair-ups for the second round, and we have all of these titles in the abbreviation, or the acronym, out of tournament, or they're out of the game, as the stereotypical Canadians would say. So we'll do a lovely little sad, sentimental goodbye, farewell moment to all of these titles down here. But look how few there are. We thinned the herd, definitely. I do want to highlight one special thing about the way these are arranged now, because another thing I like to keep track of in this competition is which books get the most amount of votes. So even if they may not be ranked number 1, they are the books that are perhaps the more popular choices in each of these brackets. So for the fiction bracket, that definitely was Anne of Green Gables. Not only did it get the most amount of votes in the fiction bracket, it got the most amount of votes out of the whole competition. So it's definitely one to keep an eye on. In historical fiction, it was definitely The Vanishing Half, was definitely the most popular choice. In the Encore bracket, we had The Paper Palace, which had the most amount of votes. And then actually in the Book Was Better bracket, we had 2 books with the same amount of votes, but still the highest, between The Wizard of Oz and Always and Forever, Lara Jean. So those are books to keep your eye on. They're the ones that people like the most. So if your favorite is going up against a popular release, then make sure you vote hard for your favorites. So let's walk through which titles are now paired up against which other titles for the second round. In the fiction bracket, we have Where the Crawdads Sing going up against Anne of Green Gables. We have Lord of the Flies versus Such a Fun Age. We have A Christmas Carol versus Beautiful World, Where Are You? And then finally, we have The Count of Monte Cristo versus The Midnight Library. So I don't really know if I have a particular preference in this bracket. They are all so good, and they were all voted for very strongly. So I don't know if I will pick a pairing that I'm rooting for. I definitely think this is going to be the one where a lot of feelings get hurt. I'm just sort of sensing that happen. And then in the historical fiction bracket, we have The Kite Runner going up against Things Fall Apart. We have The God of Small Things versus Memoirs of a Geisha. And we have The Lost Apothecary versus The Four Winds. And then on the bottom, we have The Vanishing Half going up against Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This was the weird bracket where we have no rookie release going up against no champion, because the top 4 champions won and the top 4 rookies won. So they're going up against each other. So I think this will be definitely very heated voting. Obviously, I'm watching The Vanishing Half because it was the most popular one. I am curious to see which ones emerge out of those 2 pairings in the champion books. So. And then in the Encore bracket, we have Black Beauty going up against The Bell Jar. We have Honey Girl going up against The Paper Palace. And we have The Picture of Dorian Gray versus The Gilded Ones. And The Firekeeper's Daughter versus The Spanish Love Deception. Again, kind of a weird pairing because it was so sporadic in terms of which champions and which rookies won. So we have a champion pairing and then 2 rookie release pairings, and then 1 champion rookie release pairing. So it will be interesting to see which emerges victorious. I think I'm keeping my eye on this particular pairing the most because these I know are 2 very popular current reads. Even though they didn't get the most votes in that genre, a lot of people really like them. So I am curious to see which one emerges. So moving on to our final bracket, we have The Maze Runner versus The Wizard of Oz. We have The Silence of the Lambs versus The Call of the Wild. We have Always and Forever Lara Jean versus The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. And we have The Life of Pi versus The Invisible Man. I mean, it's obviously, I'm watching very closely The Maze Runner versus The Wizard of Oz because so many people voted for The Maze Runner enough that it beat out a massive champion, and The Wizard of Oz is one of the popular choices of the bracket. I'm not particularly fussed with any of the other pairings. So yeah, it's just kind of a wait and see, I guess, with the other ones. So they were all kind of evenly matched in voting. So we will see which one emerges victorious. So that's the new pairings for the second round. All of the links for voting will be down below, just like usual. You will have 36 hours to submit your votes. And again, if you have not read any of the books or if you don't feel comfortable answering, there's always the skip option, so don't feel pressured to vote simply based on that's what everyone else is doing. Vote for the ones that you know and that you like. Just a reminder also that in the Sweet 16 video, which will be coming out on Tuesday, the 22nd, we will reveal the Bookish Creative that's going to be supplying some of the prizes for our winner who correctly predicts the winner of Book March Madness. So yeah, stay tuned for that. I'm really excited to talk to you about them because they have some great stuff. And yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about the rules pertaining to that. So vote hard for your favorites. Share this with your friends. Share with me all the opinions you have because I want to know what makes these books good to you. So good luck. I hope your books do well in the second round, and I will see you on Tuesday the 22nd with the Sweet 16.